What happens when everything you believed in your entire life crumbles in a single moment? Imagine being a man of science, a surgeon who spent decades trusting only what he could see, touch, and prove, and then dying, not just coming close to death, but actually dying on an operating table. And in that darkness, meeting the very person you spent your whole life denying existed. This is the true story of a brilliant atheist surgeon whose encounter with Jesus Christ was so profound, so undeniable, that the very next day after returning to life, he walked into his thriving medical practice and destroyed everything he had built. His colleagues thought he'd lost his mind. His family was terrified. But what he experienced in those moments between life and death changed not just his beliefs, but the entire trajectory of his existence. Today we're diving deep into one of the most shocking near-death experiences ever documented, a story that challenges everything we think we know about life, death, faith, and the limits of human understanding. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear will shake you to your core. Dr. Howard Storm wasn't just any atheist. He was aggressively opposed to religion. For over 50 years, he built his identity on rationality, empirical evidence, and the certainty that death was simply the end. As an art professor and accomplished individual, he mocked religious believers, calling faith a crutch for the weak-minded. His worldview was crystal clear. We are biological machines, and when we die, we simply cease to exist. There is no soul, no afterlife, no God. His confidence in this belief was absolute. He had never questioned it, never doubted it. Until June 1985, when everything changed. It happened during what was supposed to be a dream vacation in Paris with his wife. Suddenly, without warning, Dr. Storm was struck by excruciating abdominal pain. Within hours, he was on an operating table, his perforated duodenum causing him to bleed internally. The medical staff scrambled, but delays in treatment meant his condition deteriorated rapidly. And then, as he lay in that hospital bed surrounded by inadequate care, Howard Storm died. His heart stopped. His breathing ceased. But his consciousness? It was just beginning the most terrifying journey of his life. What Storm describes next defies everything he believed. He found himself standing outside his body, looking down at his own corpse on the hospital bed. His wife sat beside him, weeping, but she couldn't see him or hear him. Panic set in. This wasn't supposed to happen. Death was supposed to be nothingness. But here he was, more aware, more conscious than ever before. Then he heard voices calling him from the doorway. Friendly voices, familiar somehow, beckoning him to come with them. Desperate for answers, desperate for help, he followed them into a corridor that seemed to stretch into infinite darkness. And that's when the nightmare truly began. As Storm walked deeper into the darkness, following these voices, the tone began to shift. The friendly calls became mocking. The helping hands became claws. These beings, whatever they were, started pushing him, scratching him, biting him. He was being torn apart by entities he couldn't fully see in the oppressive blackness. These creatures fed on his pain, his fear, his despair. They told him he was theirs now, forever. And in that moment, Howard Storm understood with horrifying clarity that he was in hell. Not a metaphorical hell, not a psychological state, but an actual terrifying realm of torment. Being tortured by demonic entities, Storm did something he never thought he'd do. He prayed. But how do you pray when you've spent 50 years denying God exists? In his desperation, he started reciting fragments he remembered from childhood. The Lord is my shepherd, anything he could remember. And then, from the depths of his shattered soul, he screamed out, "Jesus, save me! He didn't believe. He didn't have faith. He just had nothing else left." And in that moment of absolute surrender, everything changed. A light appeared in the distance, small at first, then growing brighter, more intense, more beautiful than anything he'd ever witnessed. The demonic beings shrieked and fled from this light. And as it approached, Storm realized he was seeing a person, a being of pure love, pure light, pure acceptance. Storm describes being embraced by this being of light with a love so overwhelming, so complete, that it obliterated every ounce of pain, fear, and despair he'd experienced. He knew, without being told, that this was Jesus Christ, the same Jesus he'd mocked, denied, and ridiculed for decades. And there was no condemnation, no judgment, only love. Jesus communicated with him not through words, but through direct understanding, showing him his entire life in review. Every moment, every choice, every act of kindness, and every act of cruelty. Storm saw himself through the eyes of divine love, and he was devastated by how much of his life he'd wasted on ego, materialism, and denial of truth. But Jesus didn't condemn him. Instead, he offered him a choice. Stay in this realm of perfect love or return to earth with a mission. During this encounter, Storm experienced what's known as a life review, but unlike anything you might imagine. He didn't just remember his life, he experienced it from everyone else's perspective. He felt the pain he'd caused others. He felt the love he'd rejected. He saw how his atheism and mockery had hurt people who were searching for meaning. Every sharp word, every dismissive gesture, every moment of pride came flooding back with devastating clarity. But he also saw the moments of genuine love, the times he'd helped others without realizing it, the small acts of kindness that had rippled out in ways he never knew. Jesus showed him that every single moment matters, that every interaction we have creates waves in eternity. This revelation shattered Storm's entire worldview. When Storm woke up back in his body, he was a completely different man. The surgery had finally been performed, and medically he would recover. But psychologically, spiritually, he was reborn. He tried to explain what happened to his wife, to the doctors, but words felt inadequate. How do you describe encountering the divine? How do you explain being in hell and being saved by the very God you denied? The next day, still recovering, Storm made a decision that shocked everyone who knew him. He called his office and began the process of dismantling his entire medical practice. His colleagues thought the near-death experience had caused brain damage. His family worried he was having a breakdown. But Storm knew what he had to do. Everything that had mattered before, the prestige, the money, the career, meant nothing now. Dr. Howard Storm didn't just survive a near-death experience. He was transformed by it. He went on to become an ordained minister, dedicating the rest of his life to sharing his testimony and helping others find the truth he'd discovered. He wrote books detailing his experience, appeared in documentaries, and spoke to thousands about the reality of the spiritual realm. But more than that, he lived differently. The man who once mocked faith became a beacon of hope. The atheist who believed only in what he could see with his eyes learned to see with his heart. His story has brought countless people to faith, not through argument or debate, but through the raw, undeniable power of personal testimony. Howard Storm's story isn't just about a near-death experience. It's about the profound truth that reality is far bigger, far more mysterious, and far more meaningful than we often allow ourselves to believe. Whether you're a person of faith, a skeptic, or somewhere in between, his testimony challenges us to ask the deeper questions. What if death isn't the end? What if love is the fundamental force of the universe? What if we're accountable not just to ourselves, but to something infinitely greater? Storm's encounter with Jesus Christ cost him everything he'd built in the physical world, but gave him something infinitely more valuable: truth, purpose, and the assurance that this life is just the beginning. His willingness to destroy his medical practice the day after his near-death experience wasn't madness, it was clarity. It was a man who had seen beyond the veil, choosing to live in alignment with what he now knew to be real. I want to hear from you. What do you think about Howard Storm's experience? Does it challenge your beliefs? Does it resonate with something deep inside you? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story moved you, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell because we dive deep into life's biggest mysteries on this channel. Give this video a thumbs up to help more people discover this incredible testimony. Remember, the questions we ask today shape the eternity we step into tomorrow. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.